Welcome to Washoe Life, the podcast about really interesting people doing interesting stuff in our community. We're in a very cool place right now and joined by a new co-host for a reason. Miss Candy Ramos is kind of our true crime person. So introduce yourself because you haven't been on before, I don't think.
I haven't. So I'm Candy Ramos, and as Bethany explained, I am a true crime aficionado. I'm a regular true crime podcast listener, true crime television watcher, and I even attended CrimeCon a couple of years ago, which is a conference for people like me.
And when we were thinking of like topics for the podcast, Candy's like, crime lab. We've got to go to the crime lab. So obviously she had to be here. So welcome to both of you. Introduce yourselves so I don't mess up titles or anything.
Yeah, my name's Stephen Johnson. I'm the Forensic Science Division Director here at the Washoe County Sheriff's Office.
Okay. Hi, I'm Dr. Lisa Smith-Rome, and I'm a supervising criminalist in the biology unit here at the Forensic Science Division.
And this is very cool. So you took us on a little walk around before we started. So if you are watching on YouTube, you'll see it. If you're listening and just listening to the podcast version of this, you should go watch on YouTube because we'll add some like cool things that we saw. But you're in the basement of the sheriff's office. What is it like to come down to work in here? And tell us a little bit of, I guess, basically, what does the crime lab do?
Yeah, so our job is to analyze evidence from various crime scenes and try to answer questions. Each section down in the laboratory, it's a little bit different. Analysts in those sections have different backgrounds, and their day-to-day looks a little bit different. But if you just sum it up, come in, they have a caseload, they'll analyze whatever section they're in, they'll analyze evidence, write reports, testify in court, and keep going day after day. It is interesting though, like we do see a lot of different types of cases, and so I can't say I've ever been bored down here, which is a nice thing. I don't know about you, Lisa.
No, I would love a boring day, but no, I've been here 19 years and I have not been bored yet.
Okay. And you get cases from all over Northern Nevada. Tell us a little bit about the number and just the area that you cover.
Yeah, so we're one of 3 accredited forensic laboratories within the state of Nevada. And so we provide service for 13 counties in Nevada, the 13 most central and northern counties. And we also provide a little bit of service for 1 county in California as well. Our workload, it's different for each section, but last year we had over 6,000 assignments. About half of those are in our toxicology unit. DNA sees about 600 to 700 assignments a year, and then the rest of them are just spread out.
Wow. Interesting. So when we were walking around earlier, I saw a lot of lab coats and microscopes and things like that. Does everyone who works here at the crime lab have a science background, or can someone like me who just watches a ton of TV, would I ever have a shot of getting a job here?
So the analysts, they are criminalists, and all of our criminalists within the laboratory are required to have a science degree, usually in natural, physical, forensic science. So biology, chemistry, biochemistry, biotechnology. There's a great program at UNR, a biotechnology program. We do have a few lab assistants, and those requirements are different. They're not required to have that science degree, but their functions are a little bit different within the laboratory as well.
Great. And I heard there's a new class coming up at UNR that has to do with profiling potentially, or how does that work?
Yeah, so we actually have forensic studies, a foundations in forensic studies certification that is now available at UNR. And so the class that I'm teaching is the foundations in forensic studies, but then there's additional classes. So we have people from this lab who are also teaching a crime scene class. And then there's lots of other types of classes that you can choose from in order to get this forensic studies certification. So let's say it could be really beneficial for someone, for example, let's say they're going to get a science, they think they're going to get a science degree, right? Or they are going to get a science degree and they're thinking maybe I want to work in forensics, but I'm not too sure. So if they take the Foundations in Forensic Studies course, which is about a 15-week course, that'll give them a little bit of nugget of information on lots of different forensic forensic disciplines. And then if they decide, okay, I really like this topic, I really like a lot of these, then they can take the additional classes like the crime scene class, maybe forensic psychology, and there's forensic anthropology, and and then just a forensic science course in itself, like what we do here in the crime lab. So there's a lot of different, I guess, classes that you can do, which is going to help you when you go to interview for a forensic criminalist type position, because it is very competitive to get a job in a forensic lab. And so, you know, when you have a science degree, you have all this background knowledge, but then when you do some of these specific classes, then you are going to likely be able to answer the questions better in an interview. So I think it should be good.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say that there's a murder scene in Reno and there's drugs involved, there's a bunch of blood, there's shell casings. Walk us through, like, there are crime scene investigators, and that's not you.
Well, we do have a team that responds to crime scenes, and their job is to document the scene as it is so they can preserve it, photograph it, scan it, collect all the evidence, and then submit it to the lab for testing.
Okay, so then all that comes down here, and you've got the gun testing, the ballistics, and the DNA and drugs,
Yes.
and those are all of that's tested down here.
That's correct. Yeah. So we have our laboratory is made up of a toxicology unit, controlled substance unit, breath alcohol unit. We have a firearms unit, a latent print or fingerprint processing unit, latent print comparison unit, DNA, and I feel like I'm missing something. Am I missing something?
I think that's it.
All right, we got them.
Hopefully.
And so
Yeah.
So depending on the evidence that's collected and what the investigating agency, the questions that they have about that evidence, will go to a different section for analysis.
Okay. And then because you're serving so many counties, so many communities, it's not like we see on TV where things just turn around like that, right?
No, I wish it was, but no, it's not.
Why is that?
Some cases some assignments or cases, just by the nature of the evidence, can take time to examine. So, for example, I'm a former firearms examiner, and when you're doing work in the firearms field, you may be looking at a firearm in a fired cartridge case or a fired bullet, and the question is, did this bullet come from this gun, or did this cartridge case come from this gun? And so in order to do that, you have to test fire the gun, collect those test fires, so bullets or cartridge cases, and then you have to look at them underneath a microscope. Well, the cartridge case or that bullet that was collected from scene or an autopsy or whatever, the evidence isn't always pristine, and it may not mark very well. So the time it takes to examine one cartridge to another could be fairly quick, given the nature of the firearm, or it could take days. It really just depends on the evidence itself. So it's hard to, because of that, we do have backlogs, and it takes longer period of time to do work, but there's no real way to ever gauge, like, hey, this assignment's going to take 2 days to complete. It'll vary just based off of that evidence.
So the expectations of the public based on timing, as Bethany mentioned, do you think there's also a higher level of expectations of juries or things like that because of the media and the idea, like, oh, everything should just be wrapped up in a bow? Do you find that is the case?
Yes, they definitely, while it's great, having all of the Dateline and all these different shows on TV, because it does bring awareness about forensics, and I feel like the jury already has somewhat of an understanding, but then there's the expectation that we can get stuff done really quick, that maybe DNA testing needs to be done on every single sample in a case, and that if there's DNA not done on a case, then there's something like wrong with the case, or it's missing something, where sometimes DNA is just not going to be helpful in a case. It really depends on the scenario, right? Very often it can be very helpful, but there are plenty of situations where it may not add any additional information. So yeah, we definitely have seen that, and I think it's called, right, the crime scene effect, or it's called
CSI.
Yeah, CSI.
Yeah. I do love that show, actually. Gotta tell you. As we were walking around and you were pointing out machinery and how long it can take sometimes to run cases, you kept talking about community safety, and you can rush. And I want to point out that there's, dedicated government employees that will stay overnight to run some of those. So, so if there's a really pressing case, you're able to expedite that. How does that work?
Yeah, so we have, if we usually know the law enforcement agency will contact us, tell us the scenario, and you know instantly, okay, this is like a rush status. Then we normally we'll say, hey, so is there anyone who would like to stay all night and process samples? And we always get volunteers, so we never have to tell someone they're going to do it. People actually want to do it, right? Because they realize that, well, it's our community too, and so we want to be safe when we go home. So people will stay all night, and sometimes there might be a few people, because there might be a few people volunteered to do different tasks, because you also need to do it perfectly and very high quality, and so you're going to be tired if you're up all the way, all night. So it's really nice to have another individual there to be double checking everything, and that's so we still can give a really high quality product. And then the next day, hopefully you've developed a profile. So if it's an unknown suspect, we get a blood stain and they think it's the suspects, and we generate a profile, we put it into our DNA database, and we get a hit. And now a hit means that we now have a name to give to law enforcement. And it is an investigative lead. It does not mean, it just means someone they maybe should look into. And it is so exciting for our criminalists when they get to do that, because we are in the basement. So we don't always get to see a lot of different people, but I always say it's like drinking some Red Bull. You get the energy you get from that. And then you get really tired afterwards and you have to go home to bed. But you definitely have an adrenaline rush, and it reminds you why we're here, right? So I feel like every time we stay all night and then you get that hit, you are very much reminded that we're an important part of keeping our community safe.
Yeah, and we're pretty fortunate to have the type of people in this laboratory for our community. The analysts down here, they understand the impact that their casework has on either a specific case or a community as a whole. And so when we have these cases where there are threats to the community, or there are very sad or tragic incidents, and we need to be able to process quickly so that we can either get an answer to an agency or some closure to a victim. They do that, and they do that willingly. And they're amazing. The people down here are absolutely incredible.
Yeah, I believe it. You are, you're analyzing the, I just blanked on the word, evidence. So you're clearly involved in these cases. Is that hard to leave here at the office when you go home? You're really seeing kind of the worst of the worst. What is that like, personally to as a parent, as a community member?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So each case, or different cases, are going to impact people differently. And you may not even realize the impact on a case until weeks, months, years later. The answer to your question, no, you can't really just leave work here. There are certain things. I have certain cases that, scenes that I've been to, or case synopsis that I've read in the course of my work, where it sticks with you. And those images, or the whether photographs or in real life, they won't leave. They're going to be there. And it's going to be different for each person. Lisa actually is part of our peer support team. So she has a little training on this, but and she does look out for our analysts, especially when we have some of these major scenes. And I don't know, you might be able to speak a little bit more to that.
Yeah, we're lucky. We have a great peer support team. There's probably 30 something different individuals from all different divisions within the sheriff's office, and actually even medical examiner's office. And we receive training so that if someone is struggling with something, and it might be work related, it might not be, but it all overlaps, then we are available just even to speak with the person in a confidential manner, and get help if they need to get help. We are there, because sometimes if you're feeling overwhelmed and you're stressed, the last thing you want to even think about doing is trying to figure out who you need to go and talk to, right? So you're having that support sometimes is all really that is needed. So we have a great peer support team here, which I think is fantastic. In some situations when our crime scene folks respond to a pretty horrible, horrific, traumatic event, the peer support team will initiate a debriefing, and that's where people who responded to that scene, so it could be dispatch members, crime scene members, detectives, whomever, will all come together and with some peer team members and actually just go through, talk about, you know, what the impact it's had on them. And that has been shown to have a lot of healing effects just right there and then, right? We want to keep our people as long as possible and in as best state as possible. So I think realizing that sometimes you're affected by stuff is the first step, and it's okay. That's actually a very normal response to a traumatic event, and it certainly can impact. I know sometimes after I was at a crime scene, I was getting up multiple times during the night for several weeks checking the doors were locked, and there was like little things like that you don't really realize, and I didn't think about it until actually after I received the training. I was like, who would have thought? But so it definitely is something that we're more aware of. That's the wonderful thing. There's a lot more, and there's no like it used to be almost not maybe frowned upon or seemed as a weakness or something if you had feelings about stuff. So it is not like that anymore.
And one of the things it's with your question, it's pretty obvious, like you go out to a horrific scene and you see something, right? So that can cause trauma. But another form of trauma that criminalists may experience is you could have an analyst working down here for 20 years and they read about sexual assaults or in kidnappings or whatever else for 20 years in a career. And over time, that builds up trauma as well. So as a whole, the forensic community is starting to understand the impact of the work that we do on the analysts. And there are a lot of resources that are being developed out there, or just awarenesses that are being out there, being presented out there for different laboratories.
Wow. So touching on things that stay with you. So I grew up here. I'm a longtime community member, and I recall a really famous case, I guess, locally, of Charles and Jennifer Cha, who were abducted at, I think they were ages 8 and 9, like 30 years ago. Can you talk about some of the cold cases that you might be working on? Or is that one still in progress? I think as of yet, it's not been solved, but how many cold cases do you guys work on? And are they ever considered dead, or are they always in progress?
So it's usually the agencies that are working on the cold cases. And so I think this is a really important distinction to make with law enforcement and forensics. You know, our job is to examine evidence and try to answer questions. It's the law enforcement agency's role to investigate those. So I don't know which cases different agencies are working, because that's going to be, that's their role within their investigation side. When I will speak generally, because we can't speak specifically to any open case, but when an agency on a cold case, maybe they have new evidence or they want to look at a piece of evidence differently, they'll contact us. We'll meet with them. We'll see what we can or can't do. Maybe there's another laboratory out there that offers different technology that we don't have available, and we might be able to help point them in that direction. But we will work cases as needed or as requested, and just based off of that need from that agency.
Great, thank you. Been curious about that for years.
Yeah.
You mentioned technology, and there's just, as we were walking around, there are some really cool machines down here, really expensive machines. Tell us how things have changed maybe in the last, you said you've been here 19 years, you know, how that technology has changed, and what is Washoe County doing to kind of stay, at the edge of it?
Yeah. When I started, I think there was like 4 or 5 of us in DNA, and now I think there's like 20. But some people are cross trained, but that just shows the growth. We had one little tiny lab, and now we have a whole hallway, right? So we did everything manually, and now we have robotics to help with the samples, just so we can get more samples through. All of the one of the things I really love about DNA and being in the biology unit is that the technology has advanced a lot since I started here, and we've just gotten just more sensitive kits that we can use. We can get DNA from a lot less sample, and we have software now that helps us interpret really complicated DNA results, and that is it's mind-blowing. It's like a biological model that was created specifically for our lab using our equipment, and we purchased it all using grant money. So one of the things a lot of us down here do is we write grants, and because we want the fancy equipment, I always say we're in the basement, but we have the best equipment possible. So and that is really thanks to the federal grant funding, and so that's how we stay on top of it.
And Lisa's being modest. She writes all the DNA grants. And so a lot of those instruments that we have down here is because she's written the grants and applied for them.
Rapid DNA. So that's a brand new one.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Yes. This is our latest exciting project that we are working on. And so with rapid, so we know it can take a while to get DNA results, right? So the rapid DNA instrument is an instrument that's going to allow us to obtain a DNA profile from good quality evidence in a matter of hours. And so this is going to be absolutely huge. So the dream or the vision is to have these rapid instruments all over northern Nevada, so that our rural agencies, such as people living in Elko or the Elko County Sheriff's Office or Elko PD, they can actually run some good, again, it has to be very specific samples, and it'll have to be very specific individuals trained to do it, but can run samples on their rapid instrument, which then that profile we can see here at the lab, because we're going to have to interpret the data and then ultimately see if we can get the profile into our database and get a lead for our law enforcement agencies in a matter of hours. So that is a very, very exciting. So we did get grant money, and we have purchased 2 of these rapid instruments, and they are going to go into the regional training center because it's a great location for lots of our agencies. They're already used to going there for training. And then we are converting a conference room into a rapid DNA lab so that they can bring in their evidence and put it on the instrument and have everything they need, the lab coats and the masks and the whole shebang, and actually run the sample. So it's not relying just on us too, right? So it's great. We will have to review all the data, but at least, we have different people inputting the evidence. And again, it's not going to replace what we're doing in our lab, but it'll definitely supplement nicely.
So with the new technology, is Washoe County and this crime lab using any of like the 23andMe stuff that we hear about, like the familial tracking of DNA? Are we doing that here?
We do not do that type of testing here, but we have facilitated for some of those cold cases. A lot of our agencies, I feel like we have very good working relationship with them. So they'll usually call us and be like, hey, do you think this case or this sample or this evidence would be suitable for genealogy? It's usually the cases where we've already obtained results but never got a hit. And so a lot of times, I'm like, let's see, do we actually have evidence left? Because it's a different type of testing than what we do here. So our DNA profile that we generate cannot suddenly be used for 23andMe. So we'll look and see, is there evidence? Sometimes we'll even test it and see, okay, is it going to be a good quality? Because that would save money. And then they very often will send it out for genealogy, and that sure has helped solve a couple of those cold cases. So it is very, very exciting. We don't care what technology is used if it helps to solve a crime, right? So being part of it, like sometimes I feel like I get just as excited about when they tell us, oh yeah, we got the genealogist got like the belief they have someone, right, to investigate. I'm like, oh my God, that's so brilliant. And so I think it's really good.
Yeah. The bad guys can't ever rest easy. You never know.
Yeah, you never know.
So we're almost out of time, and I'm dying to know, what is your favorite like toy or machine down here? You must have something that is just so fun to work on, or it just has the coolest results.
Oh man, I haven't worked with instruments in a long time. They won't let me. I'll break them. No, I'm trying to think. I don't know if it's the coolest one that we have down here, but just when I started in breath alcohol, and we had really old instruments, and to keep those things working and running properly, I had to go in there and fix components and play with them, which was fun. I liked working with my hands and trying to figure out and problem solve those things. It's not the coolest instrument we have here. It's not but it's something that I remember.
I think the rapid DNA instrument is the coolest one right now. So, yeah, I think that's probably my favorite.
And Candy, this is your area of interest. So what
You were mentioning the breath alcohol. Is being involved with the wet lab something that is that something different than what you all do? And that is people who come in here, correct? And you provide alcohol to them, and then you breathalyze them to be able to train on being able to recognize impaired people. Is that right?
So at the academies, the law enforcement academies, when they go through their DUI portion, they have wet labs where they will dose volunteers alcohol. Yeah, you guys sign me up. But the whole idea is so that those cadets can get actual practice on the field sobriety test with people at different alcohol concentrations, and they do monitor their alcohol concentration as well. I believe the sheriff's office has a green lab too.
I heard. I wasn't sure if I was allowed to say it, and that's marijuana.
part of the training as well.
Okay, great. So is that one way that citizens can help the lab? Is there anything that the regular listener can do to assist either with grants or anything that you're doing?
Oh man.
how can we help you?
Yeah, can we sign
Help
up for
us
the
help
wet
you.
lab? Is that
Yeah.
so we can't like provide funds? It's not like we can donate directly, or is that something that people could do if they wanted to support your work?
They'd have to donate through the sheriff's office or the county as a normal process. I don't know about as far as helping the lab, but I will throw this out in case people are interested. We do offer tours of the laboratory once a month. It's usually the third Wednesday of the month from 1 to 3. And we allow, they're small groups, but the people get to interact with the actual analysts, and the analysts talk about what they do. So it's a pretty cool experience.
It's amazing. Well, thank you.
Yes, thank you so much for this and for letting us down into the basement to see all this cool stuff. Really appreciate it. And thank you for watching and listening. If you have ideas for podcast episodes, let us know. You can send an email to washoe311@washoecounty.gov. Thank you.